July 4th. July 4th, 2022. Do me a favor, will you? Will you come back in time with me for a minute to July 3rd? But not yesterday. Let's go back like 250-ish years to 1776. I want to take a peek together at something that was going on. I know we come to pages like mine, the Carry Trainer page, or other such accounts on the internet because we want to learn, we want to laugh, maybe we want a little dick joke, right? We want some kind of stuff to take our mind off of things. But sometimes it's good to be serious too. I know sometimes we just want to see some thing that takes our head out of the realities that are around us. I want to stick our head into the reality of what these guys were doing. They were preparing to put pen to paper that would alter their lives forever, no matter what. Win, lose, or draw, they had cast their lot. They had decided that when I throw these dice, so to speak, their lives were forever changed. They bet with their blood that you and I would be here today having this conversation. So John Adams writes a letter to Abigail on July 3rd. Keep in mind, these dudes didn't have text messages. They not have email. In fact, they didn't even have mail service like we do, right? It didn't work like that. There was no FaceTime, no video chats. You had to take a pen, ink pen, right? A feather, a quill, and dip it in the ink and handwrite the letter and dry it, fold it up, and some dude on horseback would take it down the road, and hopefully it got there. They wrote so well. They spoke so well. They were learned men, learned. They studied Latin and Greek. They studied the ancients, Socrates and Plato, etc. They wanted to see and understand the world as the philosophers and great thinkers understood it to be, and then tweak it into this explosion of liberty, the most sweetest of words in the English language or any language. They did that for us in our stead. So he's writing to his wife Abigail, John is saying what's happening, what's going on in Philadelphia, all the trouble that they're having. He's spilling his guts. As he gets to the end, though, he kind of lays it on the line. He tells her, I understand why we're doing this. So at that time, they thought July 2nd would be Independence Day. Memory, or rather, we look at it, history remembers it as the 4th of July. And in truth, the Declaration wasn't actually signed until the 2nd of August. But he says the 2nd of July will be the most memorable epocha in the history of America. It was the 4th. He goes on to say, I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward, forevermore. You'll think me, he says, transported with enthusiasm, but I'm not. I'm well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us, to maintain this declaration and to support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory, and I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction. And even although we should rue it, which I trust in God we shall not. We, you, me, we're posterity. We're the posterity. We're only here in this explosion of liberty that has impacted the entire planet. Impacted the entire planet is because what these dudes did. I've got their names, 56 of them. As I travel around the country, I try to visit as many of their graves as possible. Sometimes I have visited their graves more than once. I'm not morbid. I know they're not there. I know it's just a pile of bones under the earth, but I go to say thank you. As they put pen to paper, they did indeed know that their lives for sure would be altered, and possibly ours. In that bargain, we got this great experiment that we get to perfect, that we get to try to do better than they did, that we get to try to input more good, more kindness into the world. It's not the leader's fault if things are fucked up. It's yours and it's mine. These men, lawyers, merchants, physicians, surveyors, bookstore owners, fishermen, they weren't presidents and statesmen. They were dudes like you and me that had jobs, that had families, that had fields to till, nets to mend, shelves to stock. They were not special other than that they saw something that was greater than themselves and they cast their lot come hell or high water. John Adams, Samuel Adams, Josiah Bartlett, Carter Braxton, Charles Carroll, Sam Chase, Abraham Clark, George Clymer, William Emery, William Floyd, Benjamin Franklin, Elbridge Gerry, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, John Hancock, Benjamin Harrison. I just saw his grave. John Hart, Joseph Hughes, Thomas Hayward, William Hooper, Stephen Hopkins, Francis Hopkins, Samuel Huntington, Thomas Jefferson, Lightfoot Francis Lee, Richard Henry Lee, Francis Lewis, Philip Livingston, Thomas Lynch Jr., Thomas McKean, Arthur Middleton, Lewis Morris, Robert Morris, the same Robert Morris College, John Morton, Thomas Nelson Jr., William Paca, Robert Treat Payne, John Penn, George Reed, Caesar Rodney, George Ross, Benjamin Rush, like the hospital, Edward Rutledge, Roger Sherman, James Smith, Richard Stockton, Thomas Stone, George Taylor, Matthew Thornton, George Walton, William Whipple, William Williams, James Wilson, John Witherspoon, Oliver Wolcott, and George Wythe. Lawyers, physicians, doctors, common men with an uncommon goal to transfer the totality of their life, their existence, their short ride on this planet into a catalyst. That's it, gone, for you and for me. They chose to fan the fucking flames of liberty so that you can do as you see fit, so you can spend your time on the phone doing whatever it is you do. As Adam said, I can see that in the end, I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction. Is your life worthy of the transaction? If you could see these dudes now in Philadelphia on a hot summer day, probably sweating, stinking, arguing, deciding, do we do it? Do we go? If you saw them away from their families, would you say that what they gave up, what you're doing with your life is worth the trade, that transaction? I hope it is. Only you can decide that. Were they perfect men? Fuck no. Neither are you, and neither am I. But they chased a perfect cause of liberty, the most sweetest of words. And on this day, we're going to blow some shit up. We're going to eat some meat. We're going to think of these guys and their wives. And we're going to say thank you. Do it. God bless America.